Good evening. It is 7 o'clock on Thursday, September 14th, and it is time for our regularly scheduled Tallmadge City Council meeting. Before we call to order, just some information. We will have an executive session this evening regarding pending litigation, so I will entertain that motion under item 12 on our agenda. And so with that, we'll call this meeting to order, and we'll start with item number 2, opening prayer and pledge. And this evening we have the Reverend Phil Anderson of Bethel Church of Tallmadge. Would you please stand?
Let's pray. God, thank you for the leaders that you have blessed our community with, Lord. Your word says that they are a gift to us. We pray that you would strengthen them and give them insight this evening. Bless them with wisdom, which your word says that you will give to us if we merely ask you for that. And God, we also pray for our community that you would keep your hand upon it. And Jesus, may you be glorified in this meeting. And we'll thank you for all that's done. In your name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. Mayor, would you lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Burton, would you please call the roll?
Becky Allman.
Here.
Jonathan Bullis.
Here.
Adam Bozick.
Here.
Mary Gutman.
Here.
Carol Kilway.
Mrs. Kilway can't be here this evening. She's celebrating with her family.
Dennis Lowry.
Here.
Craig Ciesick.
Mr. Ciesick called about an hour ago and said he could not be here as well. So we have 5 here this evening. Item 5, financial reports. Fire and EMS fund transfer in the amount of $175,000. Street maintenance and repair fund transfer in the amount of $200,000 from the general fund. And bond retirement in the amount of $100,000 from the Safety Services Income Tax Fund to council on 9/5/23. The appropriation report, fund report, and revenue report for the period ending 8/31/23 to council on 9/5/23. August financial reports to council on 9/5/23. Tallmadge Recreation Center profit and loss report for the period ending 8/31/23 to council on 9/5/23. Income tax comparisons for the period ending 8/31/23 to council on 9/5/23. Consolidated investment portfolio for the period ending 8/31/23 to council on 9/5/23. Income tax by source report for the month of August to council on 9/5/23, and the revenue comparisons for major funds for the period ending 8/31/23 to council on 9/5/23. Can I have a motion, please, to accept these reports as presented to us or prepared for us?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Bolus and Mr. Bozick, any discussion on these reports?
I have one question.
Sure.
For Mrs. Gilbride. On the consolidated investment report, there are 4 different investments that are set to have maturity dates for this calendar year. And they total about, I don't know, quick math, it was like maybe 13 some million. What do we normally do with those when they hit those maturity dates?
So 2 of those are actually kind of what I would call money market accounts. So a Star Ohio account is actually like a liquid savings account, but it's invested by the state of Ohio into a plethora of funds. We're actually receiving a 5.48% return on that. So that money's going to stay right where it's at. Same thing, Premier Bank is also a government fund money market. We're getting 5.62 on that, so that money will stay. And then the 2 CDs, when those things mature, I will look at our cash flow needs. Likely, I will probably roll those over into other CDs. I have been going out, I don't know if you noticed, a little further on some of our CDs to kind of curb some of that interest rate to give us some of that 5% maybe into 2024 and 2025 to keep our returns high so we don't see the Fed start to lower the rates, because those 2 main money market accounts are driven by the Fed and those rates. So I'll monitor that closely, and once those start to kind of drop a little bit, we'll put those into some more secure, not secure, that's the wrong word. I'll put them into a more stable
Right.
interest rate environment.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good, thank you. So, hearing nothing else, Mrs. Burton?
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
So reports are accepted 5-0. We need to back up. I made a mistake. We have to handle the minutes. So I need a motion to adopt the minutes from our meeting on August 24th.
Move to adopt the
Thank you.
minutes from 8/24.
Second.
Mr. Bolus and then Mrs. Allman. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. Mrs. Burton?
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Minutes are adopted 5-0. Item 6, public hearings. We have none. Item 7, this is the point in our agenda where anybody from the public can come in and address council for up to 2 minutes each on anything that is not on the agenda. Miss Donna Mullins from 65 Byatt Road had called ahead of time and made arrangements to talk to us. So at this time, Mrs. Mullins, if you would like to come up.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name's Donna Mullins. I live at 65 Byatt Road. My house sits in front of the allotment that was built, the Beecher Road allotment. I brought pictures because I didn't think I could get 1,000 words in 2 minutes. So, this is a picture of our backyard prior to the allotment going in.
Testing 1, 2.
If you walk around, it's all recorded. Thank you.
The top picture in this picture is a picture of our home, backyard, first 20 years we lived there. And then after the allotment went in, you can see where it kept flooding, just like recently this spring, the water meltings all the way up to the fence we put in for our dog. Now it's coming up to the fence. Also, these pictures, I took these pictures last night on top. The little flecks in there are mosquitoes in my backyard. And then at the bottom are the neighbor's backyard. You can see how muddy it is. He's lost. You can see along here multiple panels of his fence. So I'll send these around. So I've contacted over the years multiple people about the problem. I know Mr. Royer had come out. He determined it wasn't due to the drainage, which I agree. It was 13 homes on 8 acres of wetland. Every time a basement went in, that water was displaced. So I think that's what the problem is. I actually had an excavator come last year and we were given the okay by the mayor to put a pipe that would have a 12-inch pipe with holes in it from the corner of my yard to run down and tie into the Humble sewer. He quoted me $10,000. And then I was also told that I would be responsible for that pipe if the neighbor who okayed the easement sold and the new neighbor that would move in would want to build a pool. That pipe may need moved. So I feel this is the city's responsibility because multiple people, I have signatures that Mr. Bolus has. I have neighbors that live on Humble that also butt up to that allotment that are having problems with drainage and flooding. I also contacted the EPA, and she had said that the application was, they received the application for that builder to build back there, but then the application was withdrawn and there was no reason why. Usually when they request to build on wetland, and it goes to the state, and then it's determined by the zoning committee. There's supposed to be compensation of some sort, either monetary or setting aside wetland somewhere to compensate for that. So I'm not sure what happened with that.
Mrs. Mullins?
Yeah.
Give me about 30 more seconds.
Okay. There were two articles. The developer had sued. The project was held up for almost a year because it was declared a wetland. And then also my taxes have been reduced by a third because 100 by 300 feet in my backyard is unusable. And that's been since 2011. I've only paid 2/3 of my taxes. So, any questions?
Any questions for Mrs. Mullins? All right, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Obviously, Mr. Rohr's in attendance this evening.
Right.
And Mr. Bolus, will you continue to be a liaison here?
Yes, absolutely. And I do have copies that I can pass around of the signatures and the various estimates that she's collected from the various neighbors in that surrounding area that I'll pass around.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mullins.
Thank you.
Mr. Lowry,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, but if Mr. Rohr or the mayor could give a little background on, what you found and how the development was approved and now what the problem is here. I'm just, it seems pretty apparent that, we do have a big problem.
Sure. Dave, if you could go to the PowerPoint. So I think I met Mrs. Mullins for the first time in 2020. She gave me these pictures. This is a picture of the shed that she has there. Behind it would be the Woods Bend cul-de-sac right there where the cursor's at. The next photo, I think it says 1978 on it. You can see the shed to the right down there. So the Woods Bend allotment would be behind that wood row back there. Here's another photograph of it closer. You can still see the shed. That was the first picture. You can see where it's at. And then fast forward, I don't know what this is, but you can see the allotments in. The shed's there to the right, and then there's a pool of water there. Next photo. This is the fence, so you can see it's a decent sized amount of water there. So this was the first time I went, was in May of 2020. The water's there. You can see there is a depression in there. I don't know. I think Ms. Mullins said that was a dirt bike track at one time for your kids, maybe?
It actually went back around where the water lays. It went into the wooded area and then around, so it wasn't actually right in that area.
So there was a depression there for sure, no dispute about that. Next photo, you can still see it. So after looking at everything, I think you can spin it. We went to the county GIS. You can see the house on Woods Bend. Can you put the cursor down on the cul-de-sac there, Dave, on Woods Bend? And if you go to that, what's the elevation there, Dave, that's circled?
Right there.
No, up to where the red dot, yes, what is that, 11?
So the topo lines here, what he's looking at, this is a high mountain right there. It's 1175.4.
And then go to the one up top, way up top, it's by it.
1174.2.
And then go to the back, the one that's not that right next to the wet spot there.
1172.1.
So you're dropping, it's actually a bowl right there, and then that wet spot circle is where Ms. Mullins' wet spot is. And then if you go to the next one going down, that's 1170. So everything, it's a bowl, it holds water. The next slide. If you go there, that red, this is a soils map from the Summit Soil GIS. That red, or that purple is a Sebring soil. That's a hydric soil. It's meant to have seasonally high water. I can't read that last sentence, but it's during periods of high rain, you do get ponding in the soil. So next slide, I think, shows the, right there, This is the Beechler Woods Improvement Plan from 2000. That highlighted area, if you go down the red font, you can see all the downspouts are tied in the storm sewer. So there's no daylighting of downspouts. Nothing's running off their property. It stays on in storm sewers. And then the storm sewers and the grade of the Woods Bin and Beechler allotment, next slide, all goes to the retention pond, which is going away from Ms. Mullins' property. That's to the east. The interesting thing about wetlands on there is, can you see the hash marks right there? Those are the wetlands that was either, there again, I wasn't here in 2000, so I don't know what the whole game plan was, but those were either delineated and approved to be filled or to be removed or whatever. I don't know, I wasn't here. But those were the only wetlands. If you go back, Dave, shrink that down, you can see there was no wetlands in the back of the property that abuts Mrs. Mullins's. So there again, it appears to be a depression. I still stand behind that. It seems to be a wet soil that does hold water. I can't see where the Beechler development added anything to it.
Well, when all the trees were on that allotment, and then they timbered it out, and then they displaced the water that was back there, there were always puddles back in there, because my kids used to ride their bikes. That water was displaced.
Ma'am, I'm not an expert at that, but there again, I don't see any pipes or no grading that was directed towards your property. And unfortunately, that backyard of yours is a lower elevation compared to the surrounding grades. So I still, it's a low spot. I don't know what else to tell you.
It was never low before the allotment went in. We never had any water in our backyard before that, and you can see by the pictures.
So that's
So
what
why
I've
is
looked
everyone
at.
having trouble?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's what we've looked at, and I think it's been an ongoing problem for years. There again, I don't have a solution for it, but there appears to be nothing that's coming off of the Woods Bend allotment, the Beechler allotment, that's adding to it.
It's not coming off of it, it's coming from being displaced.
In addressing similar, flooding complaints that we've received over the last few years, specifically in Ward 3, could we look at various options, at least to holistically understand? I know she's collected various estimates for some various work. I'm just thinking directionally, could we at least align on what would be the appropriate solution, come up with some next steps on at least a path forward with this?
We certainly have. I think we've talked with Ms. Mullins about that before. You could definitely fill. That's her backyard. That's not a wetland. You could definitely get fill dirt in there. There again, she could secure an easement off of her neighbor to run a pipe. Once that easement is set in stone and recorded, they can't build anything on it. So whoever told you that they would remove it if they wanted to put a swimming pool, that's not how an easement works. It'd be recorded, and it'd be an easement based on drainage. So,
Okay, we talked about bringing in fill, and we were told we couldn't do it because that water would be displaced onto our neighbor's property if we were above them.
that's you can't add water to someone else's property, but it appears to be a low spot. I mean, there again, those are suggestions. I mean, I'm no expert, but those are suggestions that you could look at. If you wanted to drain it, you'd have to get an easement. If you wanted to fill it in, you could fill it in. It's your property. And no wetlands there.
It wasn't a low spot before the allotment went in. It was never an issue before the allotment went in.
There again, Ms. Mullins, we've talked many times, and I just don't see how that allotment caused that.
So how for over 20 years it wasn't? We didn't have any water in our backyard.
I don't have an answer for you on that one.
Okay.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak to council this evening?
Are we allowed to speak on that topic?
Yes, sir.
Well, I just have
You have to come to the mic and state your name and your address.
My name's Thomas Gardner. I live at 827 Humble Road. It's just down the road from Donna. I've lived there since 1962, and that was my playground back there. Do you have elevations on the property before the development went in?
I believe that is the,
Those are the elevations now.
I think that's the elevations pre-existing. So I think that ridge is still there.
You think the ridge is still there?
I think that ridge that's
Because
there,
there was no water back there. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, there was no water back there. That was where we played. We had a path through there up to Six Corners. We could go up to McMillan's grocery store. We could go to Lawson's. And that was our place. And growing up there, I still live there. The water drainage issue back there, I believe, was developed from the building of the allotment. Because there was one house there before. When you dig basements, the dirt has to go somewhere. The grading has to change. They didn't haul it away. They created a retention pond to direct their downspouts into, to direct their road drainage into. And there wasn't supposed to be a house built there. And within the last few years, there was a house built there. So rules change, properties change, and we're putting water on other people's property. I mean, I have issues in my immediate property too. But that has to be addressed some other time because it's a different issue altogether. But there's a water problem back there. It's a drainage problem. And there were new houses built on Humble Road on the corner. And that was regraded, and the house basements were dug, and the dirt stayed on the property. So if there was drainage coming off of her property down onto Humble Road into the ditches, it was blocked off by houses being built around her.
okay?
Okay, so the issue could be the water's being blocked from houses built on Humble Road, on the corner. There was one house, it was a basement house on the corner of Humble. And now there are 4 new houses built on that corner.
30 seconds, sir.
Okay. Four new houses built on that corner, so there is dirt that was put in their yards out of their basement and regraded, so it could have blocked water from draining her property. So you really need elevations all the way around her property and elevations from before anything was built to say that it was or was not a water problem then.
Okay, either again, we'll have our hydraulic engineer take a look at that, but we've only been told about Woodsbin. This is the first I'm hearing about Humble.
Well, I can tell you about Humble because I was there.
Okay, yeah, because that's never been brought to our attention about anything down on Humble causing this issue. So
Yeah.
it's always been Woodsbin.
Yeah, it could be the houses on the corner of Humble.
And then we'll have a hydraulic engineer come out and take a look and see if they can establish anything that looks different.
Yeah, so that they could create drainage back down to the ditch line in Humble from the houses that were built there, because the house was a basement house, it was a single home, and had a very steep driveway going
And
to
this is the
it.
one on Humble.
The one that was on Humble back in the 60s,
Okay.
before these new houses were built.
Yeah, but no one's ever brought that to my attention about anything on Humble. So that's.
I don't think
that's the
Donna was
first.
there when the houses were built.
Yeah,
Were you
that's-
there when the houses were built?
My neighbor Debbie was the one that lived in that little house.
Yeah, you remember, okay.
Yeah, we'll get a
Okay.
hydraulic engineer
So,
and
yeah,
we'll meet you guys out there and
That can be addressed, I mean, for drainage issues. And even the city had put a pipe in down,
see, it's all
Buy
trying
It
to flow
Road.
down to Sunset, all the way down to the creek
Right.
towards Akron.
right, it
So
goes all the way down.
It's where it's trying to go to.
Yeah, right. And that's where the water went before,
Thank you very much.
okay?
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am?
I'm not very good at this.
You're fine. Just state your name and your address, please.
My name is Lynn Roddy. I live at 759 Humble, which is like 3 or 4 houses down from the corner of Byatt and Humble.
Thanks. Could you pull the mic down a little bit closer? There you go.
And When I moved in with my husband in 1999, there was no water problem at all. We had I believe it was a quarter horse sump pump, and it worked fine. Got all the water out, no problem at all. Once those properties were built back there, between then in 99 and just this past winter or spring, I'm sorry, we went from a quarter horse sump pump to a 3/4 horse sump pump. I went from a quarter to a third to a half to 3/4 before we got to the point where, for the most part, there was no water in the basement. Even with the sump pump running, there were times that you could see the water bubbling right up out of the sump pump area because, number one, the sump pump wasn't big enough, but number two, the water from all the drainage was coming in there, and it was coming in there faster than the sump pump could handle. I also have seen when it has rained severely hard, we have an area of gravel right against the deck behind the house. You can stand there, and when it's a torrential downpour, you can stand there and watch that water run right over, just like a little stream, right over that gravel area and right up against the cement wall of my basement. It was never there. I mean, I moved in 1999. My husband bought that property in 1998. We discussed several times, when you first bought the property, was there any problem with drainage? Was there any problem with water in the basement? He said, no, there never was. I can't have him talk now because he's not with us anymore. But we discussed it many times. And he said there was never any water in our backyard. Even after we put the cement driveway in, you could watch the water run right down the driveway. And our house, out of the several that are on Humble, our house has always been the one that was the worst. And our property is located right behind the cul-de-sac.
30 seconds, ma'am.
So I don't know whether, it's because all of the drainage from that allotment runs right down onto my property more than anybody else's. But if you talk to other people on the road, some people have had water issues.
What's your name again, ma'am?
Lynn Roddy, Roddie, 759 Humble.
Okay, Ms. Roddy, I'll be out to take a look at you. I've never met you, I've never heard this problem with your property, so I'll be out to take a look.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you all for coming in. I know it's not easy for you to do when you're not used to doing this in this type of setting, so we appreciate it. So thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Rohr. Okay. Anybody else this evening? Okay, we'll move to item 8, agenda additions. We have none. Item 9, reports of administrative officers. We will start with the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a very busy last several weeks. Start off with the swearing in of 2 folks. Aaron Gooddown is a new patrol officer for the Tallmadge Police Department. That he was sworn in September 30th. Dave Chicolta was promoted to sergeant, and that was this afternoon, and that's his swearing in this afternoon. We give the applicant or the employee the option when they want to do it. His choice was to do it at 3:30 today, so that's why it was not at council, but we do offer council. The 9/11 memorial at the Circle went off extremely well. The white candles, that was the new candles purchased, burnt all night long. Well, one, it did not rain, so that was very nice, but so they were picked up the next morning, and so it was a great addition to that. Update on the fire station And if I can get this one view, as you can see, the doors are being installed, and you can see the operation, how they operate back and forth. That was the design, to move side to side instead of up and down. So they move pretty nice, very smooth. This door and the one behind it, the two wood doors, will be in fully operational tomorrow. And so they'll start operating out of that bay so they can start the next ones. So that's moving along very well. I know Councilman Lowry asked me, why did we have to dig up the floor in the new station for a sewer problem? And rest assured, it was not at Station 2, it was at Station 1. There was a sewer pipe that was broken underneath the ground that had to be repaired. That repair was found and that repair was made. So I think when he met with me, he was under the impression it was a new station, which is not. A lot of punch list items still in Station 2, and that's a day-to-day operation, and I'm not going to bore you with all of those. Item number 4, business retention visits. We did make the visit to Steer Enterprise, doing extremely well. Spielman Electric also. Kenda Tire, Martin Wheel, they have their final plans being developed. They are on track to possibly break ground yet this year out on the Maple Crest Golf Course. If you're familiar with the golf course, it's basically the back 9 is the whole golf course that they purchased. Herman Machine is also doing well. They're having a record-breaking year this year, so we're really happy for them. Welcomed a few businesses into town. Bell Barber Shop on August 16th. That is in the Giannino's Plaza. Chelsea Driving, or School of Dancing, August 24th. That's on South Avenue, Acme Plaza. Then breakfast at Tiffany's. That's in the East Avenue Plaza, and that's Tallmadge Center, so that was going well. A couple things we're also working on that will need council's action. At the rec center, the chiller to operate the cold air for the makeup air has failed. We're working on prices to get, and it will have to be a reappropriation. Right now, we're fortunate that the weather's mild, so we don't have to run the chiller, but we can still run the makeup air. So that will, I got to replace it. At the police department, the main brain controller for the operation of the HVAC equipment also failed, and that was a $12,000 part. He does not have that. He paid for it, the chief did, but it's not in their budget to be able to absorb that, so I'll be working on that. The Joint Dispatch Center ribbon cutting, a grand opening for that building is October 6th at 11 a.m., and we will send stuff out for it, but it will be at the dispatch center. They will not be doing tours at that time, so if any council member, I know I've taken quite a few of you in there, it's getting to a point where they will not allow anybody into that building because the amount of strategic placement of equipment in that is done on the inside, and so it's getting very hard to get inside that building, but I can take you in if you want to see it. Go Live is coming in the middle of October for the COG side of it, so, and then Akron's working on moving in. Their goal is to be operating also by November, December up there. Electronic recycling drive, Saturday, October 14th at the rec center, 10 to 2. We will also send that information out to council. Very popular event that goes on up there. Beggars Night, trick or treat, Thursday, October 26th, 5:30 to 7:30, or to 7. And then Lions Club this Saturday, spaghetti dinner and tribute to Larry Bagnoli. So if you have time to swing by Lions Hall, I'd appreciate that. I'll buy you a bowl of spaghetti. And looking for a new member for the ARB, that's the Heritage Commission, that's the Architectural Review Board. We're down one member, and so if anybody has a member from the public that would like to be on the Architectural Review Board, send them my way. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anything for the mayor? Okay, Director of Administration, Mrs. Stritch.
Thank you. Mine will be much shorter. We are currently working on the 2024 budget. The administration has met with all the department heads so they can present their requests and discuss the budget for their department. Now the administration is meeting on everything that's been presented, and we are having our meetings to look at what's in the funds and the balances. And so we're meeting on that next week, and then we'll have a second round with the department heads to further discuss where some adjustments may have to be made and get some more information, and again, with balancing the budget against all the requests that's given to us. The department heads have been very active in communicating with us. My door's open all the time, so if anyone wants to come in and talk about the budget, any one of you can come in too. I'm always there, so you can come talk to me. The second item, these are just the two large items, is the compensation study. You should all have the three pieces of legislation that will be just presented this evening to you. We have a speaker this evening that will talk during the Personnel Committee of Council, Mr. Kevin Shabista from Clemens Nelson, who is the consultant that the city used, and he'll go over the compensation study process for you to give you a base of how it was conducted. And that's really all I have at this time. Thank you.
Anything for Mrs. Stritch? Thank you. Director of Public Service, Mr. Rohr.
Good evening. To start, September 18th, the demo of 89 East Howe Road, the Summit DD building starts. So the construction fence will be going up, as well as the tap of the water line that they need. October 11th is the paving of the West Avenue Hill. That's from the water break. That is going to occur in the evening hours. West Avenue will be closed between Thomas and Britton, and there will be detours out at that time. For the past month, the zoning department had 52 total permits issued, 38 of which were zoning certificates, 13 of which were street openings, which are new houses being constructed. Code violations, there was 40 open violations, 12 of which was property disrepair. Tallmadge Reserve Phase 6 and 7, the subgrading utility work is complete, so the road infrastructure is going to be starting here soon, so that's moving along nicely. Cemetery, we had 6 total burials, 4 full and 2 cremains. For the parks, membership at the rec center was 7,274. That's an 8% increase from a year ago. Unique users is 1,832. Visits at the rec center is 13,074. That's a 5% increase from a year ago. So we're definitely moving in the right direction from the COVID years. Fall Festival, October 7th, is between 1 and 5 p.m. at the Tallmadge Rec Center. Park Circle Fest, as the mayor mentioned, happened. It was a great event that was held on August 19th. Knock on wood, no issues occurred. Last day for pavilion rentals in the parks is September 30th, and last day of field rentals is October 31st. Maca Aquatic Center, we had our first doggy swim August 26th. Pretty decent turnout. I think there was over 30 dogs at the event. Obviously, the pool was closed about 2 weeks ahead of time before this occurred. They're just trying to do some creative things there just to entice more people there. Membership sold for the year was over 2,000. August visits, which wasn't bad, was 4,700, and then 18,000 total daily visits occurred throughout the year. Street Department, 44 hours on street sweeping, 5 tons of debris was removed, 48 hours for berm mowing, 210 lineal feet of ditching occurred, 3 catch basins were built. This is the one that's pretty cool. 19,313 lineal feet of crack sealing occurred, so that's road miles. So that's how we measure that off, which is quite a bit. That's the most we've ever done. Citywide sidewalk program is complete, as well as the citywide paving concrete is complete. Moving on, we had 1 water break in the utility department. That was the one on West Avenue. You can see the picture there. That was actually a double break. Once they got the first break occurred, we had a second break occur farther downhill, which sometimes happens because that line's stressed. So 7 water breaks for the year, 0 sewer backups, 2,400 lineal feet of sanitary sewer was videoed, 6,113 lineal feet of sanitary sewer was jetted, which is clean, and 3 fire hydrants was repaired. And that includes my monthly report, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. Anybody have a question for Mr. Rohr? Okay, let's move
Thank
to Director of Finance, Mrs. Gilbride.
Good evening. Everybody should have received my written reports. There's nothing unexpected or anything unusual to report at this time. Councilman Lowry did mention to me that he's received some inquiries regarding the TIF out at Tallmadge Reserve. I'm not really sure specifically what the questions were, but just to reiterate to you, we do have a tax increment financing district that was established prior to that development going in that allows us to use property tax dollars and redirect them for a specific purpose that benefit the residents of that development. The reason that we did that was so that we could finance the new intersection at Washburn and East Avenue, and so that will be paid for by that, and then the whole East Avenue widening project. That tax increment financing district is set to take effect for tax year 2024, and the city will then begin collecting those revenues in 2025. Based on the estimates we previously used, I'm going to guess we'll collect probably more than we anticipated. It is a 30-year non-school district TIF, which means that the school district's taxes will not be affected by the TIF. They will receive 100% of their levied dollars. And I do not also anticipate that the TIF will remain into effect for 30 years. We will evaluate once we finalize the road improvement and probably be able to end that sooner. The taxpayers do not see anything different on their taxes. They pay the same tax rates. It's just a matter of those taxes being redirected for a different purpose than they were originally levied for. And I'll be glad to answer any other questions on that.
Well, thank you very much. I think you just, you answered probably the main thing that residents don't know, and that is the money collected the same. It's just that we choose legislatively to redirect that to let us do something to benefit everybody that we otherwise could not do. Right? Thanks.
Mr. Lowry?
Mrs. Gutman.
Yes. Mrs. Gilbride, just could you, for the benefit of anyone listening, when you say the money's redirected, could you say where it's redirected from?
So the city will, it's directed from, it's complicated, but unvoted tax levies that were prior to 2007. Anything voted after 2007 are not allowed to be redirected. So those tax levies, primarily that would have there's some county levies that we will touch from. There are some city levies that will touch from portions of that. It will be the incremental increase in the property value that we are receiving. So it would be monies that they had not received yet, but will eventually receive once we finish that collection period. I could give you, I don't have the specific breakdown, but I could provide for you what the estimated in the levies. And like I said, we knew that in order to maximize the revenue and knowing that the widening project would be off into the future, we did elect to hold off on collection on that till tax year 24. So those levies right now are being sent to where they rightfully belong. And then when the TIF goes into effect in 2024, the county will then do an analysis, and then those monies will be sent to us, specifically identified, and then we have to use them for that specific purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Gilbride. Any other questions? Mr. Vozick.
So on that topic, once we begin collecting that, I take it we'll have like a call-out item.
We
on
already
your
have a
reports?
separate, there's
already
already,
one in it? Okay.
yes, if you look at your financial report, there's already a separate fund for that. We actually already accounted for we're accounting for the debt payments through that fund that we're making on the East Avenue and Washburn project. So that was about $1 million of debt that we issued. And those monies are being run through that fund. And then eventually, once we begin collection, we will reimburse the general fund for all those debt payments that we've made.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Director of Law, Mrs. Raber.
Thank you. Just to let you know, we have been very busy in my office. We will be holding an executive session later today to discuss pending litigation. And we are working on, our community outreach that we do with the schools with regard to Red Ribbon Week. That's coming up here next month. So we're working in cooperation with the Tallmadge Elementary School and the middle school to spread awareness with regard to that. Thank you.
Thanks.
End of report.
Anything from Mrs. Raber? All right, let's move to item 10, get into our legislative agenda. Reports of standing committees. We'll start with Planning and Zoning and Mrs. Allman.
I call the Planning and Zoning Committee to order. We have no legislation before us. Is there anything from council or administration for Planning and Zoning? Seeing none, I close committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Allman.
Thank you.
Finance, Mr. Bolus.
Thank you. Call the Finance Committee to order. This evening, at first readings, we have Resolution 2023-11, Exhibit A, accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Summit County Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies, certifying them to the county fiscal officer, and providing for immediate enactment. Any discussion or questions regarding Resolution 2023-11? We did not receive a request for first reading adoption?
No, this does not need first reading. It will just need to be, need to be adopted at the end of the month at second reading.
Any discussion on the resolution? Or we'll
Mrs.
just-
Gilbride, will you just give us an overview of what this is? This is like a housekeeping thing.
Yes, this is a housekeeping thing. We're required to do this every year. It authorizes the county fiscal office to basically collect all our property taxes as the rates as stated in the exhibit. Just for your information, I did confirm, I know there's been a lot of talk about property valuations. The valuations that are on the exhibit are not the updated evaluations. All those are still going through an appeals process. Once the county has updated the valuations, they will give us updated estimates on the property taxes.
All right, thank you. We'll keep this one and give it a second reading. Anything else to come before committee? I close Finance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bolus. You're up again, Personnel.
All right, we call Personnel Committee to order. This evening, we have Kevin Chabesta, consultant with Clemens Nelson, will speak tonight regarding the compensation study. At this time, sir, would you like to approach the mic?
Thank you for having me, Council. I appreciate the time to speak before you on the work that Clemens Nelson has done on behalf of the City of Tallmadge to analyze your current existing compensation plan and provide recommendations for updating it for the near future.
Kevin,
So-
can you raise your mic,
Yeah,
please?
sorry.
Thank you. You're a little taller.
I am a little taller, yeah. So, little background, Clemens Nelson is a private company, does labor relations and public sector work. We do human resources consulting for public employers in across the state of Ohio. That is our bread and butter. As part of that, we do labor negotiations, but we also assist clients that come to us with requests to do compensation surveys and wage surveys, update compensation plans. So in 2022, City of Tallmadge approached us and we agreed to entertain and engage in a project to look at your current compensation plan conduct a wage survey, and along with that, assist with updating Human Resources Department with position descriptions. So the main aspects of the project that my firm worked on for the city is doing a wage survey of comparable public sector employers, mostly contained in the geographic Akron metro area, preparing and updating position descriptions, then evaluating the wage survey results and the current pay ranges and assignments for city the positions and the non-bargaining employees, and then preparing updated recommendations as to new ranges and where positions should go within those ranges. So currently, the city has 6 ranges, 6 bands, and so as a part of this project, our recommendation is to move to a 9-band system. But let me back up a little bit. And we met with administration, we talked the scope of the project, and then worked with administration to select the public sector market comparables. Those included Aurora, Barberton, Cuyahoga Falls, Fairlawn, Greene, Hudson, Kent, Macedonia, New Philadelphia, North Canton, Ravenna, Stowe, Streetsboro, Twinsburg, and Wadsworth. We had overall good response. Reason we went with that many is to get enough aggregate market-based data to kind of get a picture of the Akron market, and also survey some other public employers that are somewhat similar size, just kind of get a picture of the market in your area. So the jurisdictions were selected based on considerations including geographic proximity, similar size, demographic data such as per capita income, household income, all right, based on your tax base, income tax rate, etc. We surveyed a number of positions. They range from your high-level positions, your directors, like your director of administration, director of public service, police chief, fire chief, down to positions like computer technician, receptionist, police records clerk. I won't give you the exhaustive list, but we surveyed about over 30 positions. The reason we do that is we're trying to get enough feel for the market as far as throughout all of your bands existing at the time. You had 6, so we're trying to survey enough positions within each band so that we can use that external market-based data to kind of get an idea of which positions relate to each other externally based on the market-based data, i.e. which positions have similar minimums and maximums, and therefore likely when readjusting and making recommendations for updates should also have in the future similar minimums and maximums. The other part of this project was, again, updating position descriptions so that then we could do what we call an internal equity analysis, which is evaluating your positions as they are somewhat against each other for setting the hierarchy, for example, from department head on down, which positions should be paid internally similarly. So it's a, external comparison was done and an internal comparison was done. And then after I do those, I took the two and put them together to then identify and recommend to council which positions should be paid similarly and within similar bands, and which positions should move or not move based on the market-based data and the internal equity analysis. So that internal equity analysis is done using what we call a point factor system. It's a tool that we provide to our clients that they then can use or administer or ask us in the future to assist them with administering, that has 10 factors, including education, experience, supervision, responsibility for assets, consequences for errors, policy, creation, development, administration, communication level, responsibility, health and safety, physical demands, creation of reports, creating, evaluating reports. It's a broad-based factor to try and get a picture of positions, ones that may be heavy in reports and not so heavy in reports, or may have physical activity or not so physical activity, so that even though positions don't necessarily have the same duties, we can try and compare and come up with an objective basis for assigning positions that may be, that are different but should be paid similarly, both based on what the external market-based data is showing, but also based on what the position, the actual duties of the position say the person will be doing. So when we're building the compensation plan, it's about the position and the duties and the essential functions, not necessarily the person in the position and how well they are doing their position. So, so that's overall kind of how the project worked. On top line things to kind of highlight, overall what we found was your minimums You currently have what we call a spread of 2.5 from your minimum to maximum, which means your maximum is about 2.5 times your minimum. What we found based on the external market-based data that your minimums were low, which means that you may struggle if they are not raised, and that is one of the recommendations is to raise the minimums. And that also, because of that big spread, your maximums were higher, that your maximums should be reduced a little bit so that you don't have a maximum that's unattainable. So what we did was take your bands and reduce the spread from a 2.5 average to about 1.6, 1.75. I know that's technical, but when we build a plan, we're trying to keep you competitive and have maximum rates that are potentially attainable with good performance, longevity, et cetera. And so having that big of spread, we feel is not beneficial to city and attraction and retention. We also, as a part of our plans, we work with a minimum, midpoint, maximum philosophy, that you have a minimum entry-level rate that no one should be paid less. You have a maximum, which is the maximum someone should be paid for the position. You have a midpoint just to identify generally your philosophy for trying to hire somewhere between the minimum and the midpoint, but that can, may need adjustment based on the individual market-based forces at the time. So you currently have a target. We're recommending moving from a minimum target maximum to a minimum midpoint maximum system. Additionally, all the bands that we've designed, are going to have overlaps so that the lowest one overlaps with the band 1 overlaps with band 2, 3 goes higher and overlaps, so they stagger so that they catch. And that as part of this project, when we did ultimately make the recommendations, there was department heads were met with and were able to review the data, and we explained the process for going through this so that they could provide feedback on at least a little bit so that they understood what the project was and what was going on. I don't know if there are any questions, and Jill, is there anything else that you think you want me to kind of hit as the big picture overview?
Mr. President, I would open it up to council at this point
sure.
if they have questions.
I was just going to mention too that as part of it, every individual employee had the opportunity to go through their job description and answer questions.
Correct.
And do a survey with
Yes.
regard to the point factor manual factors. And so they were able to do that. The supervisors were able to do that. That was also part of the process.
Yes.
Thank you, Megan.
And early in the process, the position descriptions were updated based on what we call a position analysis questionnaire, which was disseminated to all the non-bargaining employees so they could fill out what their actual duties are. So we got updates, and we're able to update what their job duties are currently versus what they had been in the past under the past plan, so that all the position descriptions are now updated and should be accurate for the future.
So I've received a couple questions.
Sure.
One is, when you did the analysis of all those communities that you made reference to, was the criteria weighted so that being close to this area was weighted larger than being similar to us, but being way down in New Philadelphia in a totally different market? Or was everything weighted the same?
Everything was weighted equally in this case, trying to get the average. And so while New Philadelphia is further away, based on trying to get a picture, we weighted everything equally.
Then the second question I've been getting is explain the overlap in the bands.
Sure.
And how that may be used.
So the overlap in bands primarily comes about the philosophy of promotion, right? That when you have positions within the city structure, usually through levels of supervision or just responsibility, that employees can move up in position or classification. So when creating a compensation plan, positions in the lower bands tend to be entry-level positions that people start out with, and as they learn and do well in those positions through civil service or other promotional opportunities, if it may be into an unclassified position, they're able to apply for those positions, be considered, and therefore then when they are selected and the applicant that is then placed in a position, that the higher position will have a higher minimum and maximum. And so it's unquestionably a design of all compensation plans that bands overlap, that the lowest band, if in this case band 1, will go from 1080 to 2098. Band 2 will overlap it and be 1439 to 2518. Band 3, 1770 to 2832. Band 4 is 2056 to 3187. It's that idea of when we do the external analysis and blend it with the internal equity analysis, that we are able to take what other external public employer comparables are doing and look at their similar positions, and we ask them to kind of mark if they think they're similar or not, and then group the positions that should be paid similarly based on the external data, take the internal analysis of how the positions relate based on the education requirements for entry level, the experience, and then put them together and kind of create a playing field for all the positions that should have a similar minimum maximum. So there's always a kind of a stacking overlap up to the top band.
Thanks. And the last one I've received,
Sure.
Again, regarding the band overlap, is should that have any impact at all on our use of the comp board? Either decrease the need for that or the same, or will there be a correlation to this and use of the comp board?
I don't know that I would say, and your comp board is something that the city's had for a while, and we did, look at and you'll see in the ordinances, and Jill and the Director of Law can speak to it as well as the mayor, because we talked about it. You have a comp board, so we updated the language just to kind of change, not necessarily how it works and reads, but just kind of go through it and talk about it and see what updates were required to keep it going forward. You have a comp board. Most other places have a system where, for example, the mayor will be, has the ability to provide a raise as long as it's budgeted for. And if it's not budgeted for, the mayor would have to ask for funds to then provide that raise. And so long as that person is in between the minimum maximum, that raise can be provided. Your system provides for a comp board for the review and having a group of people, not just the mayor, kind of review that and make recommendations as far as raises. So I envision it, but the administration can speak on it probably more as to what they envision it, is that you'd still have that comp board. The comp board is going to look at the individual employee and the request and factors that the comp board determines are such as merit and performance, and look at that along with where the person is in the band, and then make a recommendation within the band where that person should be paid.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
if I may, the language on the compensation board is contained in ordinance 2023-77. It's the similar language to what we currently have. And you will still need, under the current system, just like we do now, to have a compensation board. And the compensation board was originally developed to have a check and balance when anyone gets a promotion, or maybe someone's hired at a higher rate than between the minimum and the midpoint. There are circumstances where someone may be hired with a plethora of certifications and more education, and maybe there's a reason to bring that person in above what is allowed, which would be the midpoint. So the compensation board would approve or review that. And again, it's the check and balance between the elected officials and the appointing authorities. So that's really the intention of it. So I really don't see that going away. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a few questions. Related to what you just spoke about, being a minimum, mid, and the max, do we have specifics as to, if you have a undergraduate degree, a master's degree, a doctorate, is it spelled out within those pay bands specifically to say, yes, this qualifies you for the mid if you have a master's degree, or if you, how does that, is it arbitrary? Is it?
No, so the benefit of this new system, and when you read through, that primarily the administration of it is outlined in 2023-77, but the point factor manual is to, outlines all those criteria, so it's all the different things that are going to be used for the placement of any new job into a band, but also should be utilized to make those determinations when you're onboarding a new person. And then in order to justify something beyond the midpoint, that appointing authority would have to come to compensation board and be able to make those arguments. And there are points allocated for each of those criteria.
Okay.
To elaborate a little bit, I just want to add, I think this might help clarify, is the points for education are given to the job based on the minimum education requirements in the job description. So where we would be talking about playing into that is if we had somebody who we say required a bachelor's degree for a job and they come in for a master's, those would be the type of factors we would be looking at when we're placing them within that pay scale within the band. And that would be a factor that might be considered if you wanted to put them over the midpoint, to say this job requires a minimum, the minimum qualification is a bachelor's degree. I'm starting that, the band starts at $30 an hour, but they have a master's degree plus 15 years of experience. So we're going to compare that person then to the qualifications in the job description and see if that justifies where they land in the band.
Okay. So on the flip side of that then, as an employee, at what point or how would they go about requesting a comp board review? Can you, is that specifically spelled out somewhere, and is it provided to all employees throughout the city?
So the way that works is that they would have to go to their supervisor because it's something that need to be budgeted for. So they either the budget can absorb that or the needs to be budgeted for the following year. So supervisors can't just make that determination on the fly because they will have had to have that money allocated in the budget. So no, that's not something that typically, like, you can, what the employee can do is ask their supervisor, hey, I would like this is why, and then the supervisor can decide whether or not they have the money in the budget to be able to do it in the current year, or if they want to ask for it for next year. With regard to this, we know that, so the analysis that was done is done based on the job description. We still have to go through the process of looking at the individuals that are already in the jobs. So again, the placement in the bands and all that is based on the qualifications for the job, not for the person who's filling the job. That piece is the second piece.
So there will be, I guess, a second part of this, which will be the current review of current employees to determine where they would be placed, which could be possibly be placed outside of the band that they're showing.
No, all the positions are in the band as outlined, period. Then from there, if the supervisor would like to request, or if they feel that they would need to, for internal equity purposes, need to request to come to make another further adjustment, then the process that we've outlined is they would have to use the point factor manual to justify that, to come before comp board and say, this is why, because this person who's in this job has experience above and beyond, has been here a long time, performs an excellent job, et cetera, all the factors that are in the manual, to make it more objective, to say, here's the basis why we'd like this. And what we're saying to the supervisors is, so if you have those employees that you want to do that with, you need to be budgeting for that in the budget. You need to be requesting those funds in the budget, and then, either it will or will not be approved through the comp board, but you need to be requesting that so that you have room in your budget for those adjustments.
So with the manual that you just talked about, the point factor manual, is that something that is been reviewed or was part of this review process? Is that something we can get a copy of as well?
Mr. Bozick, we'd be happy to give you a copy of that. That is part of the compensation plan. We didn't have those specifics before, so
Okay.
actually, this is even better than what we had. But just to reiterate too what you said, it is like a two-phase process, this being the first phase of getting everyone on a playing field for market equity. That's the external phase that we're doing right now. The second phase is doing the internal equity, because this first phase is based on your job position only, those position descriptions. The second phase is based on the individual. Like, you may have an extensive amount of experience, or like Molly said, you may have higher levels of education, you maybe have attained certifications. So that's our next step. This is the phase one.
Okay. And then going back to the other question about the process of the comp review, is that provided to all employees?
Well, what is written in the ordinance is what is available. So that the administration of it is kind of outlined there.
Okay, so there's not necessarily something like in the employee handbook as a new hire or current employees could go and say, okay, here's how I could request through my supervisor, and it lists what the process is.
I don't believe that there's that.
No, I mean, the way we've been doing it for the last 20 years on the comp board, that I've been really around doing it on the comp board, the employees know that it is out there available. They know what to ask for. The supervisor has to take it forward. If the supervisor feels that employee, they want to take that employee to the comp board, then they put their packet together, the comp board meets, we deliberate over it and say, yes, we agree, or no, we don't agree.
Right. I think that could be spelled out probably a little better for employees. Just speaking from experience, not my own personal experience. I'm just saying from employees that worked under me, not really understanding how that process works. And then my last question is pertaining to, for example, you had mentioned all the different cities that you reviewed, and you're looking at, position to position kind of comparison. Was there consideration, or is there a factor involved where, for example, let's just talk about like Parks and Recreation departments. They have X number of employees here in Tallmadge, whereas maybe Green or Fairlawn doesn't really have that extensive of a Parks and Rec department. Is there some sort of weighting factor, or I guess walk me through that process of what that,
We try
how
to
that
do that.
comparison happens?
Your Parks and Rec is relatively large, so that was a difficulty in this project as far as getting enough comparable data to do the survey. So we did take a look at the data that we got, but Parks and Recreation departments, I work with a number of cities that have them. They're all different as far as their structure and organization. So what we tried to do is move, is take into account the data that we did have and move from top down to build kind of the plan, and then look at what you'd done historically with where those positions had been. And so you had a 6-band system that had 2 bands where Parks and Rec positions were in those bands. We moved to a 9-band system to try and, we felt more adequately closely grouped positions that were similar. And then we used kind of some of the internal equity analysis to look at the recreation department. But it was difficult because you do have a nice and very well, from what I understand, run recreation department, but it's more robust than others.
Right. And so the only thing that was kind of spinning in the back of my mind was when we did the Parks Master Plan study, we had talked about the total number of employees that we have within the department, and then what is the equivalent for the total number of full-time equivalent employees that we currently have and where we should be at compared to other departments of similar size. And I guess, was there any kind of that looking at, yes, we're looking at the general pay amongst all the employees, but are we looking at, well, wait a minute, maybe we need more employees within this job field?
It was a compensation plan, not a staffing
That's what I was
study.
just gonna say.
Okay.
That's more of a staffing study, which I think is a very good question, but that was not done in this particular plan. That would be a separate.
All right, thank you. That's what I needed to know. Thanks.
So just because we do have people watching and probably a lot of employees watching tonight, but when you do a compensation study, this is the first one I've ever been a part of that only looked at wages and did not include benefits. So just to be clear, you didn't do any comparison at all how our benefit package compares to those other communities, did you? This was only wages?
Correct. This was a wage survey
Okay.
looking at updating the ordinance and the pay band.
I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that. Any other questions? Mr. Bowles?
Procedurally, within committee, I have questions specific to certain ordinances. Should I hold those until we go through the reading?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin. I want to say it's been a pleasure working with him. It was a long process getting to it, but it was so in-depth what we had to go through. We want to try to get it right, and I think we've come pretty darn close to doing this, and I think a lot of our employees will benefit from the upgrades on this.
Thank you, everyone, for having me tonight.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I have one follow-up question, probably for the administration on the term, the definition of supervisor as it relates to the comp board.
I mean, ultimately, it has to be the appointing authority that's gonna be on board with that, because they have to budget for it. So it's the appointing authority to the level of who's gonna be the ones.
Right,
submitting
so
budget.
the employee can go up until they get to the appointing authority. So it's not like you just have one chance to ask somebody and a supervisor down the chain can just shut you down, correct? Thank you.
All right. We will continue on with Personnel Committee, moving on to first readings of ordinances or resolutions. First up, ordinance 2023-77, Exhibit A, tract, amending the broadband compensation plan for the non-collective bargaining employees, amending provisions related to the compensation board, and providing for immediate enactment. At this time, I'll open up discussion, questions, or conversation on ordinance 2023-77.
Mr. Bolus?
Yes.
I know all three of these ordinances, it's pretty in-depth, there's a lot of information there. And obviously, council needs to take time, review it, put your thoughts, and I know you've been working on it probably more than your other colleagues, but please look it over. If you have any questions, like Jill said, come in to her with the questions, put them together so we can answer them properly for you.
Yes.
Mr. Bolus, for your sake and for council's sake, just to kind of give a broad view of the three ordinances, why there's three ordinances, if this is helpful at all. We have ordinance 77, 78, 79. Just to be clear, 77 updates the current ordinance that we have, and so does ordinance 78. We currently use two ordinances daily when we are hiring, when we're looking at different compensation, promotions, whatever. So 77 is updating the current ordinance we have, defining the bands, and again, going over the compensation board, similar to what we have now, but it just is keeping it, updating it, so we have a new, so you don't have to keep going back and forth. So if that's helpful. 77, 78 is updating, 79 is the implementation of the compensation plan. So that's a one-time ordinance. And we can discuss them when we get to those.
Thank you. Specific to 77, I just had two suggestions for the amendment. One, I had a question on the voting member designee. So there's a statement in the ordinance that says we can have a designee at the comp board meeting to vote, but there's no requirements or criteria of who that person would be. I think we should add in some language there. Is that the vice chair of council, for example, of a personnel committee, or is it another member, or does it just have to be a resident of the community, or does it have to be an employee of the city? Just some criteria of who the designee is, because I didn't see that in the ordinance while we have it open.
We can do that. I mean, like for law director, I only have one potential, which is the assistant law director. For finance, it's the same, but I understand your point for council, so that's a good, we can do that.
Okay, great. And then secondly, just should we put something in there procedurally on requesting a compensation board meeting, like some criteria of being granted the meeting? I know you just discussed, going through supervisors, just to ensure that it's clearly objective and there's a criteria to be met. Also, maybe some restrictions. If one is granted for a specific request, is it then, no further requests can be granted for X amount of time, something of that nature. Again, just a suggestion to determine like how often that board would meet, if it's as necessary, just maybe adding in some criteria, some language in there so that it's clearly objective on, if someone met the criteria or if they did not.
Sure, we can look at that.
Thank you. Those were my two questions for that ordinance. Anyone else have anything on 77 specifically?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I guess going back to that, what Councilman Melissa just mentioned, would there be, I guess, who is the burden mostly placed on when, say, an employee requests for a compensation review? Is the burden placed on the employee to put together a packet of information? Is it placed on the supervisor to provide that information? And what information does the comp board need to make that evaluation? Is there a set, here's X, Y, Z, that's what the comp board needs as a minimum. Everything else beyond that's, preferred or better, or?
So this does incorporate and rope in that point factor manual, which again didn't exist before. So this is more criteria than we've had previously. I think also we were cognizant that we didn't want to change too much of what had previously been done because we weren't sure what the threshold for council would be with regard to that. So if you're inclined to us to add more additional things, we can certainly look at doing that. And then the burden would ultimately be on the supervisor to put together the packet, the one who's advocating for their employee, their appointing authority. I know I'm using the wrong word. The appointing authority who's going in front of the comp board to make that request, they are the ones who have to come together with that information, which again now is going to incorporate this point factor manual that didn't previously.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that said, we will keep ordinance 2023-77 at first reading. Moving on, ordinance 2023-78 tract. This is establishing the number of non-collective bargaining employees by department and position pursuant to RC 731.08 and providing for immediate enactment. Open the floor for discussion on ordinance 2023-78.
Mr. Bolus?
Yes.
This again is an ordinance updating the ordinance that we currently have. The positions are the same. It's just incorporating the new band numbers, so instead of going from 1 to 6, it goes from 1 to 9. So this is updating our current legislation. And this will be continued to be used as we do now for reference and placing.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
In just, obviously this is just from my experience because I've had these individuals working for me. And I know kind of in detail what all of them do. But within the recreation department, I guess when looking at some of the positions and then seeing what band they're at, and then going back to the criteria that's listed in Ordinance 77 with what that pay band is and kind of a general description of here's what they are involved in. I guess knowing what some of those individuals do and knowing whether or not they have staff that directly report to them, whether they're part-time staff or other full-time staff, I guess what my point is at what point do we decide whether that is in the right spot, I guess? Was that determined by the study? Was that determined by the employee and the supervisor or the department head? I guess kind of walk through how that happens.
So that was determined by reviewing the job description and comparing it with the point factor manual. So the job description, based on all the criteria in the point factor manual, are compared to the factors, and each factor has a specific point. And so each job then, you add together all the points, and that's where the band numbers came from. So people whose scores range in 200s, they're in band 2. People whose scores range in 100s, they're in band 1. So that's how all the jobs were done.
Okay, and that is based on just not the individual person that is within that position right now.
Correct.
It is based on.
It's based on the job
Here's the
description.
job
So if you
description
have a person in that
for you.
job who exceeds the minimum requirements of that job, then you have the opportunity to place them at a higher pay rate in the band.
Okay. All right.
And keep in mind, if you're in band 2, you could be making more money than someone that's in band 3, and that's when he said they overlap. So just because you're in band 2 doesn't degrade who you are. It's just what the point factor for that position came up to. You might be making more than a band 3 person.
Right. Okay.
Yes, Mr. President.
I just want to make sure I understand on what you said, Mrs. Gilbride. So there is a caveat, though, right, that full-time employees make more than part-time employees. You can do the same job. You can basically have the same job description. But if you're a part-time employee,
No,
you're at a lower.
I know that we have part-time employees doing professional jobs that make more than,
The full-time counterpart?
yes.
Well, then.
So that's not the factor.
Okay.
The factor isn't how many hours they work. The factor is what are their job duties, what do they do? It's not about the number of hours that they do it. So being full-time doesn't give you points. Your job duties give you points.
All right, we can have an offline discussion. Thank you.
All right. We'll keep that at first reading. Next up, ordinance 2023-79. This is implementing wage adjustments for certain non-collective bargaining employees, appropriating necessary sums, and providing for immediate enactment. At this point, I'll open it up for discussion on ordinance 79.
Mr. Bolus?
Yes.
This is the ordinance that will be a one-time ordinance. This is the actual implementation of the plan. It includes how it's going to be implemented, and it includes the reappropriation for if it's implemented in its current state. So the additional appropriations to take you to the end of 2023 for this phase 1 of this plan.
And this would take effect immediately following if it was adopted.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then as you move forward on page 2 of this, in section 9, item 2, it discusses then the section on if there's any internal adjustments. That is in 2024, as Mrs. Raber was saying, and within the budget. So this is your implementation ordinance.
And how are we accounting for like that in the 2024 like budget workshops? Since it's not yet adopted, are we just basing it off of the phase 1 and then going through the internal equity process? Just thinking in terms of timing, because we have to go through the various budget workshops for the end of the year, and then that analysis will be done probably in parallel. But
It's a little challenging, let me just say, but we're here today, so we're going to try to, I guess, our goal is to try to get phase 1, get everyone up to market, up to the market analysis here with this stage. And that would be in the budget, obviously with the adoption of Ordinance 79. Then the other part, the department heads will be, if there's other adjustments, then that can be done as we're preparing the 2024 budget. Because as you know, that's a moving document over the next short period of time. So, you know, that can happen.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I have a question as a follow-up to that. And it's something you had asked earlier about, is there a set dates for the comp board? Which I think in theory would be a good idea to have one to say if you want to request a review, then, you know, the month of September, August, you know, whatever the date is, would be your cutoff date to be put into the budget for the following year. Always going to be exceptions to that, but I think it would be good to know, especially if you're an employee and you're looking at it and saying, you know, I want to come ahead of time and know that either it's going to be approved for the year 2024 for the following year, or it won't be. So I
So
think,
department heads should be having those conversations with their employees to propose into the 2024 budget. We wouldn't have a comp board necessarily to do that until those proposals are presented as part of the budget and then approved financially.
I see your point, yeah. They are running so close in tandem that, yeah. So, thank you.
And then in terms of oh, go ahead. I was going to say, in terms of timing, I see here, public hearing held by council on this matter, October 12th, 2023. So is the public hearing just applicable to ordinance 2023-78, or?
Correct. And the reason for that is because there's designations of civil service and of classified and unclassified, and if we deviate from the Ohio Revised Code, which we are allowed to do pursuant to our charter, we just want to have that covered. In this particular round of the amendment to this ordinance, that's not even what we're doing. We're just adjusting the bands. But as part of the standard practice for this ordinance, every time this ordinance comes in front of you, we'll run it through that way so that we've covered our basis with regard to that particular issue.
Okay, thank you.
And you need to probably state on the record that we're setting the public hearing and the time for the public hearing, please.
All right, I can do that now. We are setting a public hearing by council on October 12th, 2023. Do you want to say 7:05? 7:03?
Anytime after 7.
All right. Do we need to have a roll call on that specific?
No, you just need to state it.
Okay. All right. With that said, anything else to come before personnel? We'll give these a second reading and then reconvene. All right, thank you. Close committee.
Great job, Mr. Bowles. Thank you. Let's move on to safety. Mr. Bozick.
Thank you. I will open Safety Committee. We have 5 members present this evening. Currently have no legislation in front of us this evening. I'll open it up to council, administration for anything. No, I do have a few questions and a few concerns that were voiced to me recently from some citizens. And it relates to, we are basically almost 1 year removed from the shooting that took place down at Mac Burleson Fields near the Ritchie Memorial Shelter House. And I was curious if the administration can walk us through what steps have been done since meeting with Tallmadge Little League and other citizens. Since that point, what has the city implemented to, I guess, you're never going to be able to prevent everything, but what have we done as a city, I guess? Can you?
I won't be able to answer that for you tonight. I don't know when you got that question asked, but that's definitely the type of question I would like to get ahead of time. I will definitely have the chief in to talk about it. As the safety director in Rec Center, I mean, we've met with all departments and rental process,
Right.
How to do this and agreements and screening stuff. And it's just a multitude of items, but just to get asked.
Well, and my apologies. I literally was asked last evening, so
Okay.
I didn't, obviously with working
that's
today,
okay.
didn't have time to
But you gotta understand our side of it too. That's
completely
You're asking
understood. I just wanted to kind of bring that back to light because we are basically 1 year from that. And I mean, I know internally what we've done as far as pricing increases for the hall, and I believe we've done some lighting. I think the biggest factor that I know some citizens were concerned about was cameras. What have we done in regards to camera systems down there? So those sort of things have been just kind of resurfacing now that we're coming up on that
Appreciate it.
anniversary.
We'll get back to you on that.
Thank you. Any other info for Safety Committee? Mr. Bowles?
Yes, I saw we have some garage doors that went up at Station 2.
Yeah, I think I showed you them operating
Yes.
up there. As the installer who's installing them said, these are the smoothest operating doors they've ever installed. So I guess it was worth the wait. He installed the ones down in Green, the same bifold, different manufacturer. You gotta go see them.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. With those doors, I know when you had sent the picture last week, there was no, I guess there's maybe a gasket or something that goes between the doors.
No, that's a safety device so you can imagine when the doors go shut, and if somebody's in there, it will pinch them, and those motors will drive it shut. So with that gap that you saw, the 4-inch gap, those gaskets are actually pressure pads that have wires in them. So if somebody is in that, or a vehicle or anything, it hits it and it automatically.
I think in the original photo you had sent, they didn't.
Yeah,
there was
they
nothing
weren't
there,
installed yet.
So that was, and when I drove by, I know I could
Today they're,
see right through it. So
Yeah.
those are now installed and.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then the bottom sweep so no air comes in the bottom. Those aren't installed yet, but they will be in operation tomorrow with the safety items that are on it required.
All right, thank you. Anything else to come before the Safety Committee? Yeah, look like you're ready to hit the button. Hearing no other, I will close Safety Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bozick. Community issues, Mrs. Gutman.
Thank you, Mr. Lowry. I'll call community issues to order. We have before us tonight at first reading Ordinance 2023-80, authorizing the mayor to receive funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, for the minor home repair program and enter into all necessary agreements appropriating funds and providing for immediate enactment.
We did apply for some funds from the CDBG. Andrea did through her department. And we did receive the $15,000 matching grant. And as you can see, the Section 2 reappropriation from the unappropriated balance of the Community Block Grant Development Fund, $32,297.57. That is the balance that is in that fund. We do have 2 applicants that have applied that are going to be awarded. And I can't tell you exactly the amount of each one of them, but this is a nice program that we've done in the past. We haven't done it for a couple of years, but we did apply, we got it, and so she's working on completing it. Does not need to be adopted, well, it can't be adopted tonight. We don't have enough council folks for first reading and adoption. So next council meeting, or it could probably go all 3 readings, because we're not ready to do the work yet on the properties.
Okay, thank you. Just out of, is this for our residents, the minor home repair program? And how would they go about using that if they wanted to apply, or is that something they apply for the benefit of people listening?
Yes, so there is an application process. You have to present financial documents, financial needs, and all of that information. I believe that there's the contact information on our website about how they can obtain that application. We do a small program here. Residents also have access to this program through Summit County. So Summit County also does this program. So if our program right now is very small, we're just utilizing the excess balances we have in the fund. But if there are residents who are interested in this program, they could contact Andrea and she can direct them to the appropriate places at the county to obtain that information.
And we did have the director scheduled to come tonight from CDBG, Holly Miller, but she ended up had to cancel tonight, but she will be here to talk about the other programs that are available for all the residents, such as weather stripping for their homes, different items, lead paint stuff. But she'll be here to explain all the programs that are available through the CDBG funds.
Okay, that's great. All right, so we'll leave that at first reading. Then, are there any other questions on that or anything else for the committee? Okay, seeing none, I'll close community issues.
Thank you, Mrs. Gutman. Public Service, Mrs. Allman.
I call the Public Service Committee to order. We have no legislation before us. Does council or administration have anything for public service?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Rohr for clarifying some road closures that were going to be taking place over in the Norton Dunbar Road area. So thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Anything else for public service? Seeing none, I close committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Allman. Item 11, reports, special committees regarding council. I would just say, update council that we are now operating under the new Richardson Trust Fund parameters that Mrs. Gilbride and others helped put together. Records retention, we are all up to date with that. Cross-training between the 2 employees is completed. And the only thing left on their to-do list for a goal for this year is to put together an operating manual for moving forward. So is there anything else anyone has?
Just wanted to provide an update to council. We held an ad hoc committee meeting on council operations budget. It was a good meeting, great discussion. Thank you for all who were able to attend. We kept most of the items that were originally proposed in the budget currently, and again, working with Jill and team on that. And then there was a few action items for follow-up, just to assess some of the estimates we received, and then we can bring those up at our workshop for final decisioning.
Thank you. Okay. Item 12, this is where I will entertain a motion, please, to enter into executive session for the purpose of pending litigation.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bozick, Mr. Bolus, any discussion on going into executive session? Hearing none. Mrs. Burton, please call the roll.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Dennis Lowry,
Yes.
Becky Allman,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
So we have voted to go into executive session 5-0. For those in the audience and those watching, we will not be taking any further action when we come back other than to adjourn. It is 8:45.